Hey guys, it's Navinad. We're going to talk about just basic heads-up strategy. We're going to talk about our pre-flop play a little bit, but really focus on our lines, like the lines that we ought to be taking post-flop. 8-6 offsuit, pretty obvious raise on the button. And what are we going to do if we get 3-bet? Well, without any information, we're just going to fold, right? I mean, depending on the sizing, but generally, just fold it. If it was an 8-6 suited and we had some kind of read as to how villain was going to play post flop, if we knew his tendencies and we knew we had a skill edge, then I think that would tip me towards calling. With this depth, anyway, 75 big blinds. 7-4 offsuit is just going to be a fold. We should note that villain used a 3 times the big blind sizing. It doesn't necessarily mean that much on its own, but if we see some other sizings later on in the match, then we can start trying to work out what that might indicate about the strength of his hand or his range. 9-7 offsuit is going to be a call against a min raise. It's a little bit trickier against a 3 times the big blind open, but I'm inclined to call it at this depth. 9-7 offsuit, pretty easy, trivial open raise. I played this game last night. I decided to turn the sound off so we don't have like distractions of bleepings and binkings and chips splashings and all those fun sounds. And when we actually do see a flop, we can talk about the lines. I remember in game thinking, wow, like every kind of thing came up. You know, like we had showdown value and bluff catching situations and value situations and semi bluffs and barreling. And it seems to me, as I recall, it was a pretty good spot to do some strategy talk. So 10-8 offsuit on this flop. We just missed. You know, we just have nothing, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. He c-bets. We're just going to have to fold. If you're thinking about, well, you know, he's going to be c-betting this flop an awful lot, and he'll be c-betting it light. Well, that's true. But that doesn't necessarily give you a license to just attack his c-bets. And there's just going to be better hands to do it with. Now, once he checks back, I think we should test him out. When he checks back the flop, we should bet the turn as a bluff here, hoping for fold, of course. I'm probably not going to be inclined to do too much if he plays against us. We're not going to probably put in the double barrel on the river. But when he checks back on the flop, and we bet the turn, we learn a lot about not just how he's playing, but specifically about his continuation bets, his c-betting strategy. So we know that if he checks back and then he calls the river bet, then he's checking back showdown value and he's bluff catching turns. But when he checks back and then folds the turn, we know that he is checking back his air, and his c-bets therefore are going to be more value heavy, less bluff heavy. We've got a couple ways to play this. I mean, I would not mind just re-raising and getting it in. There's enough draws to make me feel okay about that. Having the King of Clubs blocker and the second nut flush redraw makes me a little bit more inclined to just call and play poker on turns and rivers. And we're going to exercise just a little bit of pot control. I mean, he can definitely have us beat here. No reason to do anything but just call here, and I think it's pretty obvious why. But so yeah, I guess we made the right decision to not get it in on the flop. And there we see a check raise, and his check raise was for value. So far, it seems like this guy is playing pretty straightforward and value injected with his aggression, or his aggressive ranges are going to be value heavy, and we should adjust accordingly. Bluff catch less often, float less often, probably bluff less often. Yeah, we can check back here, and we've got bottom or second pair, but it's an ace. I'm sorry, it's a queen 4 deuce rainbow board, and we're checking back to control the size of the pot and to give him an opportunity to bluff the turn, so we can bluff catch the turn, and also just to minimize our losses if we run into a hand. So that's a part of our range. We should just use his showdown value, and if we have the opportunity, then we can bluff catch a street. Once he checks twice, though, I think we should just move into a bet to fold his equity out, because it looks like he's not going to be getting out of line. So, I mean, if we know that he's not going to, well, let's look at this hand. Okay, so we definitely could have made a value bet with second pair, but I think we ought to, if we're going to be checking back showdown value, we ought to have some hands that feel pretty comfortable calling large turn bets. So second pair with a gut shot, I think, is a perfectly legitimate hand to do that with. It's for balance, but also I think its vacuum EV, like just the EV of this hand right here, right now, is going to be pretty good, probably close to optimal. I mean, c-betting that flop or checking back are probably both pretty close. So you just look at the option that's going to be better for your ranges as a whole, and I think checking back that hand is going to be better for our range as a whole. And if this guy turns out to just never bluff, then that can change. And it seems like he's not bluffing a ton, so yeah, I kind of got lost in my speaking and didn't really pay too much attention to that hand. My apologies. Okay, so we open for a min raise with ace-7, and that's pretty standard with our stack size. And we see a flop that we can either bet as a bluff, or we can check back for pot control. We had 7-8-10, now we've got 7-8-9-10. We've got the showdown value with the ace and the draw. We open in a draw, so we've just got to call for sure. When he checks here, I think he's got usually some kind of hand, but whether or not we're going to be able to bluff him off it, we don't know. So checking back and seeing if we can just beat his draws with our ace high seems okay, and his random air, and we don't want to run into a trap like we would have had we bet. So kind of interestingly, his betting ranges seem to be value heavy on the early streets, and then it looks like he's also able to get a little bit trappy on rivers, but it could be that specific run out, because there were draws that I could, and in fact did have, that missed. He wanted to give me an opportunity to bluff, so he checked and decided to play it that way. But nevertheless, something to take note of. Ace-2 suited. I mean, if this stacked up, there's nothing wrong with just piling it in, but I feel like I've got a read on this player, and I'm going to be able to beat him a little bit easier post-flop. So we've got backdoor flush draw, overcard, ace high, and we've got a gut shot. So this is going to be just an obvious c-bet bluff. And if he calls, it's not even that bad, because a turn card like the king of spades could come off, and we'd have gut shot, nut flush draw, overcard, and a very clearly valuable semi-bluff on the turn. So the basic way we want to think about, kind of framing our hand out and making a good line and taking a good line, is we need to look at our range compared to our opponent's range, and then just kind of think, like, where does our hand fall? Like right here we have, we've got a bluff if we decide to bluff, so we've got air. I mean, we've got 3 to the flush, but it's a small flush, and 3 to the straight. So those things would be okay. Now, when we hit the 5, we're expecting some amount of the time he's checking back draws. We don't mind him folding out his equity, and he could have a 2 or a 4, and we could actually get value from that. So betting seems okay there. King Queen, we're open raising for value, of course, and I'm interested to see what he did check back. Okay, and when he 3-bets, we can 4-bet, we can call. At this stack depth, I actually think 4-betting is more standard, but again, I just feel like I'm going to be able to outplay him post-flop. Here, he's c-betting a flop texture that hits my range much harder than it hits his range. When he 3-bets and I flat call, that 10-9-6 is going to be way more in my ballpark than it is in his ballpark. Plus, we have 2 overcards and a gut shot. When he bets, he's bluffing a lot, and he's not going to have much that can continue, and we tell a very compelling story when we do just ship it in there. And we've got equity if we do get called, so I think that was a pretty trivial ship against his c-bet. Yeah, we have to check call here. We've got 2, 3, blank, blank, 6. We've got 3 diamonds, and we've got second pair. And here our hand goes down in value if he decides to barrel, especially him being more value heavy in his ranges, we think. Then we're just going to fold. And here, I think we check and fold. If he checks back, we win against his busted flush draws that didn't bet, his air, and like maybe pairs of twos. I remember that was bothering me last night. I couldn't quite put that together in my tired brain why that was happening. Got it all figured out now. And so, he took a stab, which, is okay, and then just treated it as showdown value with his ace, queen high. Nothing too bad there. So we had 3 to a straight, basically air, and we think he's playing fairly fit or fold, so we just bet the flop, and I think that's fine, and just, probably just shutting down if we get any action. If we hit a card like the king of clubs, or any king really, then we could have probably fired another. There would be some cards that we would have been firing second shells. And that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about bluffing. When you're going to take an aggressive line and you're in a spot where you're not going to be aggressive all of the time, but you want to be aggressive some of the time, you may as well choose the hands that are going to allow you to do more often when you're called. So rather than just take like a 10-5 offsuit here and do something goofy with it, and that wouldn't have been terrible because we got the 5 of diamonds on a 5, 6, 8, but there'll be better spots. So using hands that have like an overcard plus a 3 to a straight flush, or overcard plus 3 to the nut flush, or 2 overcard cards and runner straight draws. Those are just going to be better hands to be aggressive with. Here, our stacks are small enough that we don't really need to worry about reverse implied odds. We just have top pair and we're just going to go with it. The stack to pot ratio is such that if he's got us beat, he's just got us beat. We're just going to lose. So then we just have to think about value targeting his range. So we need to make bets that are small enough that he's going to call them with like a jack, and we set stacks up to where we can make an all-in shove on the river that's going to give him good enough odds where he's going to be compelled to call with some second best hands. I'm not expecting a call, all that often, but I think if he has a good jack, there's a pretty good chance he's going to call, especially because there were draws, some of them bricked off. Not a lot of draws, really. He should just be folding, but I think he will fold most of the time, and he might get sticky with a jack, and he did get sticky with a very good jack. So that worked out pretty well. We sized our bet right on the turn to get stacks in, giving him a price on the river to call with his second best hands. Here, flat calling or 3-betting could be fine. If we're going to 3-bet, it's probably going to be, we're going to have to size it as a jam, so I kind of favor the call with the ace high. It's a very discombobulated flop, and I think it'd be a very standard check call against most players, but with absolutely no equity, I think it's a fold against this particular player, and I guess me from last night agrees. If we know our opponent is c-betting his entire range on Jack 4-2 offsuit, with the exception of maybe some of his showdown value hands that we don't beat, normally it would tip me into calling at least one street with the ace high. Here, we're going to c-bet this flop because it just hits our range harder than it hits his, and it's discombobulated. It's harder for him to continue. And we do have some backdoor equity, not a ton. We've got 2 overcards against second pair, or hands like pocket 9s and 8s, which probably would have 3-bet, but you get the point. We've got we had 3 to the Broadway. Here, this can again be a 3-bet. It can be a call. I favor playing pots with this guy. I feel like I am kind of dialed into his tendencies enough to where my edge is going to be best post flop. Check calling on this flop seems very standard. If stacks were just a little bit shorter, I think I would have check raised the flop and just not gone anywhere. Now we have to value target. It's important to value target. Know what hands in your opponent's range might be able to call. Second best hands, obviously. And bet a sizing that you think may get them to call. That's very important when it comes to bet sizing. It's very exploitative and exploitable, but usually it's just going to be much more valuable to think in terms of how do I exploit my opponent rather than how to be balanced, especially at low stakes. I think this is NL10. Yeah, and stacks are such that we just ship it here. Again, we could call, take a flop, or we could make a smaller 3-bet, and king, queen, and deuce is okay. But against this opponent, if I make a smaller 3-bet and he ships it on me, I'm going to be sick about it because he hasn't been super aggressive. So I think we just shove it. Same with the ace-10 here. We can make a smaller bet. Ace-10 might induce a little bit better than king-queen. And by induce, I mean making a bet that might look weak, so he tries to ship against you with a slightly wider range than he would call it off with. But when we have a hand like, Ace-10, we probably don't really want him to move all in with a slightly wider range than he's going to call with, because we actually don't mind folding out his equity. Unless he's got exactly an ace-x, and at those stack sizes, I don't think he would have been folding any ace-x's, so moving all in seems to be the favored play there. He donks. He hasn't done it. I don't have any particular reads. I don't have any equity, so I'm just letting it go. Queen 2 suited is probably it's a difficult hand to play at this depth against this type of player. I'm inclined to limp. I actually think limping would be okay here. It's the first time we've done it. Shipping it is obviously fine. It's never going to be that bad to just move all in with a suited queen at like 8.65 big blinds or 9 or whatever it was effective. That's never going to be too bad. Limping would have been probably okay, and I don't like folding. I think moving all in is clearly better than folding. Okay, so here we just check and fold. We don't have anything. He could. We could be drawing utterly stone dead, and we could have as much as 0 fold equity, so not much to think on there. 10-9 is a hand that I think we should put in our min-raising range, because we can fold pretty comfortably if he ships it, and it'll play pretty good post-flop. What do we have? We have a hand that cannot bet for value and doesn't want to bluff, so we check it back. We can pick up draws on the turn. We can induce bluffs. If he's not going to do any bluffing, I really feel like we may as well just fold out his equity or try to get value from his flush draws that for whatever reason didn't bet. So, and last night I disagreed with that. And I get it. Like, we're checking back. We're hoping that just this one time we can get him to bet his air, or he binks a 7 or something. And it did. It worked out. So maybe it was a game flow decision. And, I don't know. There's pros and cons to both plays. I think they're close. I think this is a, if he limps, we're moving all in. If he min raises, we're shipping it. If he ships it, we're puking. I mean, it's usually a real easy call. This opponent, I think it was a little bit closer, but still, calling's probably fine. It wasn't quite as interesting as I was hoping it would be, or as I remembered it to be, really. But until next time, guys, hope that helps some. Navinat over and out. Good luck.